This is Zero Station, broadcasting across the world to the Allied, Axis and Sino-Soviet Union blocs, as well as the countries of the Neutral Nations Organization.
Hello and welcome to Zero Station Episode 5. My name is Alex, and in today's episode I'm going to talk about positive things. There has been a lot of negativity lately in the Dust Warfare community, some of it justified, but a lot of it not. So in today's episode I'm going to highlight some of the positive things that have happened in Dust Warfare over the past year or so, and which are also happening right now. Okay, time to think positive thoughts. Let's go. Okay, so in today's episode, I want to talk about positive things. In the Dust Warfare community recently, there has been a bit of negativity floating around on various forums and Facebook groups and places like that. And, you know, to an outsider, it might seem like it's all doom and gloom in the Dust Warfare community right now, but that's actually not the case. And over the past year or so, and even now, a lot of positive things have been happening in the community. A lot of cool things have happened. And so in today's show, I want to highlight some of the things that have happened, you know, some of the positive things that have happened within Dust Warfare generally, you know, over the past year and also recently. And I'm going to kick off by talking about Watch It Played. Now, Watch It Played is a web show. It's on YouTube, and it's run by Rodney Smith. I should say hosted by Rodney Smith. And in the show, he basically takes various board games, tabletop games of various kinds, and shows you how to play them, and then plays through them. He doesn't review them as such, he just shows you how it's played. You know, that's what the name of the show is about, you know, Watch It Played. He shows you how the game is played, so you can make a choice of whether or not to pick it up, you know, as he puts it, whether or not it'd be a good fit for you, your gaming group, your family, your friends, and so on. And about a year ago, in early 2013, Rodney did a series on Dust Warfare, which was a pretty lengthy series. I think it's the longest Watch It Played series so far, I think. Or at least up there with, you know, with the longest ones. And in the show, in the series, Rodney went through all the basics of Dust Warfare and how to play, how to set up a game, you know, how to, you know, do things like movement, shooting, all the rules in, you know, Dust Warfare. And then towards the end of the series, he played a game with his son, Luke. He often plays games on the show with Luke and sometimes with his daughter Andrea as well. So it's a very kind of family-orientated kind of feel to the show, which is cool. And so, yeah, towards the end of the Dust Warfare series, he played a game with Luke. Luke took Axis, Rodney took Allies. And you can watch the series to see who won. But during the series, one of the cool things was that Rodney invited the audience, you know, people watching the series, to participate by helping Luke with his moves. Basically, at the end of each episode, Rodney would throw the decisions over to the audience and say, you know, help Luke with his moves, with his next move. And at first, you know, it was done in the YouTube comments, and then it moved on to Board Game Geek, the Watch It Played guild on Board Game Geek, where people would post their suggestions for what Luke should do next, and, you know, Luke would choose the best one. And that whole thing had a really cool feel of, like, you know, it was like generals huddled around a table planning their next move in the battle. You know, it was really kind of cool feel to it. So overall, the series was really well done, and it has also actually helped a lot of people to get into Dust Warfare. I've seen a lot of people say that, you know, they were introduced to Dust Warfare through Rodney's series. You know, they picked up the rules from the series. You know, maybe they heard about the game but didn't know quite how to play it, and so they watched the series and got a better idea of how to play. And also seeing the gameplay towards the end of the series also really helped as well. And also, a lot of people have discovered Dust Warfare from Watch It Played as well, by watching the show, and maybe never even, you know, maybe they didn't even know that Fantasy Flight at the time had this war game out. You know, Fantasy Flight's known for board games and card games, and, you know, they published a war game. Huh? What? So, yeah, a lot of people were introduced to Dust Warfare through this show as well. And obviously, because the rules are still, you know, we still use the same rule book, you know, it's still first edition Dust Warfare, the show is relevant now as much as it was when it was made last year. And also, I should mention that I was involved a little tiny bit in the production of the show as well, just helping Rodney out every now and then with, you know, rules and, you know, making sure he got certain parts of the rules right and, you know, things like that. So I want to say again, thank you to Rodney for allowing me to be a little part of the show. But yeah, the show has actually been a really important part, I think, of getting people into Dust Warfare and helping them to learn the rules. And Rodney also originated the Dust Warfare cards that everyone by now has probably seen. The unofficial cards that a lot of people use, myself included, to play Dust Warfare. He came up with the design for those cards, and the layout and everything, and then got the community involved on the when the game was still in the FFG forums. People would help out with various units and making and producing the cards and so on and so forth. And I think those cards will actually live on, even though we're getting official cards now in the next 6 weeks or so, because obviously when people make custom units, those won't be available as official cards. So, the custom card, I think, will still live on, even though we're getting official cards. So if you have a moment, well, if you have quite a few moments, it's a pretty long series. I think it's about 12, 14 episodes. So I can't remember off the top of my head. But if you, if you have the time and inclination, then do go and check out this show, this series on Dust Warfare. I'll put a link in the show notes to the playlist so you can watch, each episode one after the other if you want to. And yeah, by the end of it, you'll have a really good idea of how to play Dust Warfare. And also all the things you need to play Dust Warfare, and also a really good idea of how it's played out on the tabletop. Okay, moving on, I want to talk about Dust blogs. And there have been quite a few blogs, Dust Warfare, Dust Tactics blogs, that have popped up over the past year or so. And, just recently as well, there have been quite a few blogs appearing as well. Which is cool, because I've always thought that the more that a game has, a kind of a presence on the internet, the better. Obviously, the more blogs there are, the more, websites and forums and, all that kind of stuff, Facebook groups, Google Plus communities, as long as a game has all that stuff, then it looks active. It looks like, people are talking about it, because people will be talking about it, if they're writing in blogs, if they're posting on forums and so on. It makes the game look active, and it usually means the game is active. And although on the blog side of things, Dust has had its ups and downs. Just recently, sadly, Dust War, which was pretty much the dojo of Dust Warfare writing. Dust War sadly closed recently. Even though that's happened, there have been lots of good blogs that have appeared, including Dust Warfare blogs as well. Now, just as an aside, in case you don't know what I mean by the dojo of Dust Warfare writing, back in the day, way back in the the late 90s, there was a website called The Dojo, which was a Magic the Gathering website. And this website pretty much started the current, it's pretty much the kind of the forefather of pretty much every Magic site on the planet right now. From, Star City Games, Channel Fireball, all those websites. It's pretty much, the granddaddy of all those websites. And a lot of people who used to write for the dojo now write for, big Magic sites. So, Dust War is kind of like the Dust Warfare equivalent of that. And it's really sad that we've lost it, because there's a lot of good writing on the website. But one website I want to highlight in particular is Clash at Zverograd, which just recently opened, actually. Just opened last month, January 2014. On the website, Clash957, which is the username of the guy who writes the articles on the site, he goes into some depth about the topics that he writes about, and he writes about quite a lot of topics as well. Recently, he's wrote an article on how to start an army as the SSU, basically how to get into it as cheaply as possible. He also wrote an article about the command phase, a really in-depth article on how to use the command phase, how to use various orders in the command phase as well. He's done a lot of unit inspections as well on the blog, which are basically unit reviews, and talking about how to use those units, how they're best used, and lots of articles like that. So I'll put a link to his blog in the show notes as well, and yeah, go and check it out. Another really good blog that has appeared quite recently, and towards the end of 2013, is Dust Australis, which is run by Scott Robertson, and this blog is about his exploits in Dust, like the games he plays, some of the custom models that he makes, and some of those models are really, really good. And it's definitely another Dust Warfare blog that to check out, and that should be on your blog list if you use an RSS reader or something. So there have been a lot of decent Dust blogs that have appeared over the past year or so, and that, as I said, are still appearing now. There are quite a few tactics blogs that have recently appeared. That, although when they talk about strategy and stuff in Dust Tactics, it might be of interest to some people who play just play Dust Warfare. But you can still look at the cool paint jobs that people put on on their website and get some inspiration from that. That's actually one of the reasons why I make posts on Unit Forward about, paint jobs and stuff that people have done. Because, sometimes if you're stuck for how to paint a particular army, you can see someone's paint job and go, oh, yeah, that is actually a good idea. I might steal that for my own army. So, you can, get lots of inspiration just from looking at other people's paint jobs. I suppose that's why, sites like Cool Mini or not, exist. So that you can see other people's paint jobs, get inspired yourself, and maybe even try a technique that somebody used. A lot of blogs where when people talk about, painting and, units they've painted, a lot of the time they'll talk about how they did it as well. So you might pick up a technique that you've never thought about using before that you can now use, and then you try it on a mini and you're like, oh my gosh, this is actually quite cool. So yeah, there are lots of Dust blogs that are floating around right now, and it's well worth going to check some of them out. Check all of them out. Just go to Google blog search, google.com/blog search. Just type in Dust Warfare and you'll see loads of, results for Dust Warfare. I post about new blogs on Unit Forward as well. So definitely go and check out some of those, awesome Dust blogs. Okay, now I want to talk about the Dust community, and in particular the Dust Warfare community, which is made up of a load of awesome people. I mean, there are awesome people in the Dust Tactics community as well, but this is a Dust Warfare podcast, so I'm going to talk about the Dust Warfare community. Yeah, there are a lot of awesome people in the community who are, making things happen within the community, doing things like running tournaments, running websites, writing things. There's a lot of cool stuff that is happening within the community right now. One example of this is the Force Builder that was launched by Maine, full name Maine Coon, which some people might find offensive, but is actually a type of cat. So it's not actually offensive at all. But Maine wrote the Dust Warfare Force Builder, which has now become the standard for making force lists, army lists in Dust Warfare. It was launched in 2012. He's been updating it ever since. Whenever a new expansion comes out, whenever new units are released, he updates it soon afterwards with the new unit, so you can make army lists with it, and has done a great job of maintaining the Force Builder. So we don't have to use things like Army Builder and like standalone tools. Although it'd be nice if Dust Warfare were files were to exist for those tools. It'd be nice to have it for, like Dust Warfare for Army Builder, to have a Dust Warfare file or files for Battle Scribe. It'd be nice to have those things. But at the moment, we've got an awesome Force Builder on the web. It's fully web-based. You don't have to download anything. You get a link to your army, so you can share it on social media, email, websites, etc. And you can also export it to a text file. So you can save it on your computer, you can copy paste it into maybe a blog post or an article you're writing. It's an awesome, awesome tool. I use it all the time just to mess around with army lists and, like what if scenarios. What if I use a heavy commander troop instead of Lara? And, what if I use 3 squads of zombies instead of 2? And things like that. You can just mess around with lists and try to find something, that you like, that you want to play next time you play Dust Warfare. So the Force Builder is excellent. It's at dust.maincoon.net. I'll put a link in the show notes. And as well as that, people are doing things like running tournaments. The Dust War tournaments in particular over the past year were, particular highlight over in the States because they were quite large as well. And as well as those, smaller tournaments have happened all over the place. I'm currently trying to get a major Dust Warfare tournament happening in the UK this year. Actually, at least 2 of them, possibly 3. Because, tournaments are a great way to meet people. As I said in the last podcast, it's a social thing. It's not just cutthroat competitive all the time. Tournaments are a social thing. They help you to meet other people who play the same game as you do, and you can check out different armies and tactics, strategies, all that kind of stuff. So tournaments are just generally awesome. So those are currently happening in the Dust Warfare community. Also, the Dust Adventures RPG is currently being playtested behind the scenes by a dedicated group of hardened adventurers. And that's supposed to be released sometime in 2014. Modiphius Entertainment, the publisher, basically recruited a bunch of Dust players who signed up to beta test the book, the RPG. And when this comes out, it's actually going to be a really badly needed shot of fluff. That's going to be a really good thing for the Dust community. Because naturally, being an RPG, it'll give a lot of background to the Dust world and the Dust story and all that. So I'm really looking forward to when the Dust RPG comes out, and that's currently being beta tested behind the scenes by Modiphius Entertainment and the beta test crew. Okay, and finally in today's episode, I want to talk a bit about Battlefront. Now, a lot of people have given Battlefront some stick lately. I mean, I gave him some stick in the last episode, in episode 4, because of, the new dust dice and the new starter box dice and, a few other things. But Battlefront has actually done quite a few good things for Dust as well that maybe haven't been as noticeable, and some things that haven't actually happened yet, but, are in the works to happen, are going to happen, starting with Operation Babylon. And one of the things they've done is they've actually started to break out Achilles. Now, Fantasy Flight never did this. Whenever Fantasy Flight put out an operation box for Dust Tactics, then that is where the hero models would always stay. They would never be available anywhere else. Whereas, starting from Achilles, Battlefront has taken, for example, Bazooka Joe and put him in the new starter set. So Bazooka Joe isn't exclusive to Achilles. He's going to be available in the new starter set as well. So that breaking out process has, started. It's not a huge thing at the moment, but, it has started to happen. And starting from Operation Babylon, there aren't actually going to be any more operation boxes for Dust Tactics. Like the big box with the heroes and the maps and everything inside. That's not actually going to happen anymore. What Battlefront is going to do is they're going to sell everything separately. So starting from Operation Babylon, you won't have to buy, an operation box for £30 or $45, whatever it is, to get the heroes that are inside the box. You'll actually be able to buy the heroes separately. This is something that Dust Warfare players have been crying out of Fantasy Flight games to do for ages, and FFG never did it. They never actually did it. But Battlefront is going to do that. They're going to break out the heroes. They're going to, the heroes are going to break free from their operation box shackles, and they're going to, appear in your local game store as, separates. So you can go and buy, Teen and Hyane from Operation Babylon if you want to. So I think that's awesome because obviously, Dust Warfare players don't particularly need the tactics mat and, tactics cards and all that kind of stuff unless, they actually play tactics. So, why buy the whole box when all you need is a hero? Now, also, of course, we're getting new cards and tokens for Dust Warfare. And although the token set is still a bit of a mystery right now, the new cards are definitely coming out. The card packs are coming out. I've been told that they're actually being finished right now, mid-February. Well, mid to late February. They'll be released in March. And once these cards come out, they're actually going to lower the barrier of entry for Dust Warfare players. Because you can buy the campaign books if you want to learn about certain rules and maybe read the fluff and so on. But once you have the card in your hand, it's going to have the rules and stats on the card for a particular unit. And you won't really need the campaign books. So you can go and, buy the core rulebook, buy some models, buy the cards, and you're ready to play. You don't have to buy the campaign books necessarily as such. Although I suppose it's nice to see illustrations and, diagrams of how particular rules work. But it will explain on the cards what a rule is. So I think that's going to help a lot of people to, to ease themselves into Dust Warfare. They want to start playing. They won't have this thing where they have to buy, a £25 rule book and then campaign books for £15 each. They can just go and get the cards and have everything there in front of them. So a lot of cool things are happening right now in Dust Warfare. And although the people who are complaining about Dust Warfare do have some legitimate concerns, definitely, about the game and how Battlefront may or may not be, supporting it properly. The fact is that, like I said in the last episode, if you want Dust Warfare to be a success, go and make it a success. Make it hard to ignore Dust Warfare. If everyone just complains all the time, then, that doesn't look great to, to the outside world, to the outside miniatures world. Dust Warfare is a, community full of complainers. Like, it isn't. There's a lot of positive things happening in Dust Warfare. And that's why I wanted to make this episode today, so that I could, illustrate some of the cool things that are happening right now within the game, and some of the cool things that have happened within the game as well. There are a lot of great people in the Dust Warfare community. There are a lot of great resources. There are a lot of great things that have happened. And I hope that that carries on into the future for a long, long time to come. Okay, that was Zero Station episode number 5. As always, thank you very much for listening. As always, you can get in touch via the usual places. Email is hello@unitforward.com. Unit Forward is on social media networks as well. So socialmediaservice.com/unitforward. So on Twitter, it's twitter.com/unitforward. Facebook, facebook.com/unitforward. youtube.com/unitforward, and also alpha.app.net/unitforward. So, get in touch. Let me know what you think of the show. Leave comments either on YouTube or on Unit Forward itself. And hey, the show is also on iTunes as well, so why not leave a review on iTunes as well? Okay, so that's about it for today's episode. Until the next one, see ya! This podcast is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 3.0 Unported license. That means you can give this podcast to anyone you want as long as the author is credited. But you can't make your own episode, and you can't use this episode for commercial purposes without the author's permission.